we are back again for the first time in a long time. Now Kalista O-Swan on head build. So firstly, why is this a build? So here is Kalista's W, where she has this passive when she gives her O-Swan this item that she starts the game with. Her support most likely is gonna be her O-Swan, where if both Kalista and the O-Swan Soul's Mark are applied to the same enemy within 4 seconds, this is done by basic attacking. The same enemy, the marks are consumed to deal magic damage. And that magic damage is what we see is bonus magic damage to the right, which scales of target's maximum health. We'll see what we can do with this info. So to measure against, we have our support champion as our dummy, we have an average mid lane champion, and then we have the super tanky. So here's all the items we have for Magic Pen that we have available. The ability does apply Magic Pen from Kalista since it's her ability that does the damage. So we can build full Magic Pen on her for maximum damage. Then we have champion abilities that uses Magic Pen, which is only Mordekaiser's Death Grasp. But the thing we run into here is after a bit of help from the Kalista mains, we find out that only Kalistas. So this is not a thing. Then onto items for MR reduction. So of course that we count because we just lower the enemy's magic resists. So here we have Malignance and Absol Mask that respectively does flat 10 reduction and 20% Absol Mask. As for champions that have MR reduction built to their kit, Mordekaiser's again Delicia, Rel as well, but both of them are like in cases where they are not that useful, so we won't be using them, but they do have it in their kit. Then we have from Kale to Rumble, where we see a range of 10% to 54%, with Corki being the only champion that has a flat magic resistance reduction built into an ability in his Gatling gun. That goes up to 20 at max stacks. So then we also have damage received multipliers. So here we have Vladimir, Bloodsong, the support item, press the attack. That was updated 14.1. First Strike, Leandri's Torment in the Suffering ability, Riftmaker with White Corruption, and Horizon Focus with Hyper Shot. Of course, as you see with the update I mentioned at 14.1, Vladimir offers 10%, Bloodsong 5 to 10% based on if you're ranged or the unit applying it is ranged or melee. First Strike 7% bonus true damage, which could be relevant. Leandri's Torment, Riftmaker, and Horizon Focus. For Kalista's build, because of this Blight item situation, Terminus and Lightning Duel, the two items with 30% here going down from our White Staff. So we cannot build any of these items together. Therefore, we will only be using the White Staff on Kalista with the Shadow Flame, its Sorcerer's Boots of course and stuff. So here's like 4 actual suggested builds. The first 2 ones, like maximizing that. Remember, like we also have Horizon Focus here that gives the bonus that magic damage at the end. And then I thought some unhit AP, unhit attack speed based is probably a bit better for her, especially attack speed based on her movement speed, kind of a movement being based on her attack speed to some degree. So that's something to keep in mind. But we have to figure out who would be the best O-Swan for Kalista. So of course, again, Rel and Mordekaiser, we kind of get them because of their conditionals and their abilities. The O-Swan will have to use Absol Mask and the heart here, I forgot the name of the other item, as well as Bloodsong, which is the support item upgrade, which again exposes weakness for 6 seconds, causing them to take 10% to 5% bonus increased damage from all sources. I am pretty sure that is based upon if the person applying it is attack speed, is ranged or melee. And then of course we have the rest of these from Kale to Corgi. So Rumble is pretty obviously the unit that gives us the highest potential, so we'll be going forward with him. The reason Corgi is not as relevant is we run into the issue with Corgi that his flat is actually just very little. The reason he has potential would be in the sense of flat magic resistance reduction is the only way of getting a target to negative, so that would be another damage multiplier. But 20 is like nothing, like at all. With our top item here that gives 10 other minus, I think Yumi at level 6 has like 35 magic resist, basically making this item not even, this actually not add anything. But we'll get into that damage calculation. Just wanted to say why we get rid of Corgi here. This is like all of the units we consider to be good with Absol Mask. There's a list of the units that could use Bloodsong well, and then the units that would be well with this Hate Fog. But for all of them, we still see Rumble being our best bet, so we are just going to continue with Rumble. I do want to clarify, if you want something more consistent, Trundle, Evelyn here might be better bets. But again, you also want units to like that can use all of the items, so AP Evelyn is probably still better than Trundle, with the low end of her actually going down to 35. It's more consistent, because as we see here, he will be the best, but the situation we run into is for his magic penetration, magic resistance reduction to be applied. We look at he's generating heat of his electro harpoon, which inflicts magic resistance reduction for 4 seconds and slowing the target, which then stacks additively, and he gets to the stage of danger zone where electro harpoon's effects increase by 50%. That is where we get to total enhanced magic resist reduction, can go up to 54% when this ability is max leveled with that. Then we have the Equalizer, which is just his ultimate ability, which is necessary to apply the top item here with Hate Fog, which is triggered off dealing ability damage to enemy chains with your ultimate ability. Meanwhile, the other ones, auto attack or being in the radius of the enemy. So what we see here is just a slowing ultimate, which with a big AoE that is that it's very effective for applying. But we still do have some potential in Vladimir here. Let's get into it. I don't recall doing that. I made that effect like a year ago, I guess. Okay, that surprised me. He has his ability Hemoplague. If you recall, we had him on the list of units that give damage multipliers. One note for damage multipliers is we are assuming them to be applied to the damage after every mitigation has been calculated and not at the start of damage applied. I could not find the exact detail written anywhere, so this is my assumption, and then we will go forward with that assumption for Vladimir and Bloodsong moving forward. So Vladimir's ability here, after the duration, the infection bursts to deal magic damage to all affected targets, and after 0.4 seconds, I read the wrong part of the ability, I'm sorry. Enemies hit for 4 seconds, increasing the damage they take from all sources by 10%. So these are the 3 items they would need to hold, so we will try to calculate the potential damage with Vladimir and Rumble with these 3 items on them and triggered. So this is MR reduction versus damage multiplier, which one is more effective. So now we have to figure out our dummies, the stats, to figure out how to actually calculate our damage and actually figure out which one is best. So how I do this is I watch 3 videos of like high level play, 1 high level, 2 high level plays, and like usually a funny video. Here I keep like it's not as competitive as watching actual pros, as we see here with the Challenger Leona gameplay from Challenger League. So with these videos, just reading all of theirs, we get a average of MR for each character. So we go to the right column. Sorry, I cannot speak anymore. Right column where we see her average MR over the 3 games: 32 at level 1, 48 at level 6, 79 at level 11, and with full max abilities and items, we go to 287. So we do that for a lot of them, and we see Victor goes from 30 to 50, from level 1 to 16, and for Lulu, there was kind of the same stats, if you notice. She has the same stats as a mage. So we redact that and we use Yumi to make this simple. And Yumi goes from 25 to 42. As mentioned, you can see her stats actually being higher than 30 at level 11, which makes Kogi not relevant. That was the thing I was mentioning before. So this is the full table of their MRs. Then I also did the same for their HPs, for 700 to 3600 for Leona, 700 to 2700 for Victor, and 500 to 2200 for Yumi. So how do we exactly do the damage calculations? We're using these 4 items as our build, like they're the most dedicated items. Of course, you can go into a full build and actually do more damage, but this is like more so reasonable, I would say. We assume we do 18% of target's maximum health as magic damage. So we calculate that for this post-mitigation damage calculator, where we then say 0.18 times max HP will be our magic damage, and then we will apply the resistances. One thing to note, because that's going to be relevant constantly, is when at damage calculation, our target's magic resist at damage calculation equals 0, so that's after we apply all of our stuff. We will just be saying its magic damage is true damage, so that it's gonna be 0.18 times max HP target to max XP of the target, will equal the post-mitigation damage. So true damage. So how we do this is our calculation. So before we can actually calculate anything, for the MR calculation, we need to figure out the magic resist post resistance reduction due to this order of calculations, where we start with our magic resistance reduction flat. That is what the Koki did. Now we only have the one support item, and we're gonna use that. They're gonna give us that. Then we're going to magic resistance reduction percentages. So that is what we have here in the calculation in the end. Time multiplied by 1 minus 0.4. That is the void stuff percentage, minus 38, which comes from both Shadow Flame and the third item. I forgot the name of again. Storm Surge, I believe. And that's how we calculate our MR for damage calculation. So how we find our magic resistance reduction is our MR of the target minus item flat resistance reduction, which is 10, multiplied by our percentage item reduction from the absolute mask, which is 20%, with all of the ability resistance reduction percentages, which is 20% for the so we see 20% from the absolute mask multiplied with 1 minus 0.54, which is the max for the Rumble ability. And then of course for Vladimir, it is gonna be a lot simpler. We're gonna see MR target minus 20 from the item multiplied with the absolute mask for reduction, resistance reduction. But then we have to add in our damage amplification, which we multiply onto the post-mitigation damage, which is for Rumble gonna be 10% due to him being a melee champion. And then for Vladimir, that is gonna be 5% plus his Hemoplagues 10%, which is 15%. So that is the 0.15 you see multiplied on the second line. So onto the calculations. So what we see here is the full calculation we're gonna do for every single damage piece of damage. The red part you see in the top one is 0.1 and the symbol or for 0 in math calculus, I guess, or 0.54. So we're gonna be calculating Rumble's max and lowest point for comparison. And then for Vladimir, we have the calculation at the bottom. So first target would be our Yumi. So we're gonna run through how the calculations are gonna do with her, and then the rest I'm just gonna apply them. So firstly, we have her average AP per level, average MR. We plug these into the two things here below, and what we get is okay, sorry, I skipped it. Yes, this is how it looks for. So this is how average HP and average MR look. So what you see is her average HP after damage goes down to 452. Then her average MR falls to 17.8 of 5.52 based on if it's his max resistance reduction or his lowest. And then we go to 0, which is through the magic pen from Absolute Mask and the flat we get from Kalista's items. So all the magic pen Kalista has, that gets us to 0. And then you have a parentheses with minus, so that is actually the true value it would go down to. But the thing we have to pay attention to is if it's actually only through the first step of calculating MR where we can go in negative numbers. So only through resistance reduction flat application can we actually get below 0. If we hit 0 or less, for every other calculation we will just ignore magic pen and magic resistance reduction percentages. So we hit 0, and then we get our post mitigation damage, which is as you see at the calculation, 0.18 times 563 is 101. That is that's what's called 18% of. That's 18% of Yumi's max health. We multiply that by our damage multiplier because the whole fraction, it turns out like the whole bottom of the fraction is becoming 0. So we plus 100 by 0, divide 100 by 100, we get 1. So 100.1 becomes our post mitigation damage, which we multiply with our damage multiplier, giving us 111. And that's what we subtract from our HP 563. So that's how we get that, and we do that to every single one of our numbers here. So here's all the tables. We do the same thing for Vladimir here. So we just apply the same things into the formula. For again, all of the numbers become 0 because 38 magic penetration is quite a bit, so basically everything you minus at the end is gonna hit that, and 0.4% magic penetration from Void Staff is quite significant. So that you basically always hit 0, and that's what we're gonna see with basically every single one of these calculations. It's actually straight up just damage comparisons between their max health is actually what we get down to. The only exception is when we get to Leona at level 16, we actually observe that for Vladimir here at the top, her health would go from 3,652 to 3,235 because her magic resist goes up to 287. After applying all our magic resist reduction, we get her down to 221. Then we apply our magic pen, and that is then used for damage calculation. That's 94.96, so we do 416 damage. For Rumble, that level changes a bit. For the damage dealt, she only falls down to 3,254. Her MR actually does go a bit lower at the first step, of course, where she goes from 287 down to 199.44. And then with Magic Pen, it's practically 81.66, giving him a damage output of 398. Meanwhile, at the highest level with 54% of his ability, then she actually falls down to 3,064. Her magic resists at step 1 falls to 101, and then after she falls down to 23.16 with all the magic pen, bringing her lower than the magic resist of a level 1 Yumi. Just for, to have some idea of relation where we are at, where he then does 587. So what we actually see here is Rumble is actually the one who does the most, but for the most part I will be clear, and if you pay attention, we do see that Vladimir basically at every stage, his damage numbers is between Rumble's highest and lowest, so a bit more consistency might come through Vladimir, but if we go for peak, Rumble is actually our #1 choice with these items. So if we try to figure out what that means, this is our final build. It's gonna be Kalista with Void Staff, Shadow Flame, Storm Surge, and Sorceress Boots, with our Rumble support who has Bloodsong, Absolute Mask, and the third item I forgot the name of. And this is kind of what the calculation we end up with is. It is the calculation we've been doing so far, but reversed. So now we want to solve for how much magic resist a unit somebody has to have for us to not deal true damage. And that is actually 182 magic resist, which is quite absurd, I would say. So basically every bruiser, so fighters like Darius and such, are probably the best targets. They have a lot of health, they actually don't build that much resistances, so you're actually gonna be doing full true damage to those guys, and because they build so much health, you are gonna be doing more damage to those guys. But yeah, that's about where we're at, so thank you, GG's, well played, good luck, and this is our build, go for it.